Hey everyone, hope you're doing great. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we'll dive into what if Deku leveled up through missions. Smash that subscribe button, and be sure to peek at the description below. Let's begin. The wind on the rooftop was a liar. It whipped around Izuku Midoriya with a crisp, invigorating chill, a promise of life and motion that felt like a cruel joke. It tugged at the lapels of his black kakurin, trying to lift him, to fill his lungs with the soaring energy of the city. But all Izuku could feel was the crushing weight in his chest, an anchor of absolute despair dragging him down into the cold, hard reality of the concrete beneath his worn red sneakers. All Might's words echoed in the hollow chamber where his heart used to be. It's not wrong to dream. However, you need to be realistic. Realistic. The word was a physical blow. He'd been told he was useless, a pebble on the side of the road, a Deku. He'd been told that by doctors, by classmates, by Bakugo, for 10 long years. But he had always held on to one, flickering ember of defiance, All Might. The symbol of peace, the man who saved everyone with a smile, had been his proof that heroism was real, that such goodness existed, and that maybe, just maybe, someone like him could find a place in that world. And that very same man had just kindly, gently, and utterly snuffed out that ember. He had left him alone on a rooftop with the smoking ruin of a lifelong dream. Izuku's legs, suddenly feeling as useless as the rest of him, gave out. He collapsed, his back sliding down the rough brick wall of the rooftop access structure until he was sitting in a heap. His hands were scraped raw from his desperate cling to All Might's leg, the stinging pain a distant, unimportant distraction. He hugged his knees to his chest, burying his face against them as the first sob tore its way out of his throat, a ragged, wounded sound that was swallowed by the indifferent wind. The city sprawled below him, a glittering tapestry of a million lives, a million dreams. From up here, the cars were like blood cells flowing through arteries of light. The buildings were jagged crystals piercing the dusk. It was a world of quirks, of power, of heroes and villains playing out their grand drama on a stage he was now permanently barred from. He was a spectator, and that was all he would ever be. His mind, a relentless engine of analysis and what-ifs, began to spin. What was he supposed to do now? Go home? Tell his mom that his number one hero, the man whose merchandise filled his room, had confirmed that her son was a failure? What future was there for a quirkless boy whose only ambition had just been pronounced dead on arrival? A police officer? A paramedic? Noble professions, yes, but they were consolation prizes. They were the roles for those who couldn't stand on the front lines. He thought of the sludge villain, of the suffocating, slimy darkness filling his lungs. He had been seconds from death. Then he thought of Bakugo, trapped in that same villain, his explosive quirk only making things worse. He had been in danger. And Izuku had done nothing. He had stood there, frozen, just like everyone else. All Might was right. A hero acts. They move before they have a chance to think. Izuku had only thought, and frozen. A darker, colder thought slithered into his mind, unbidden and terrifying. The railing was right there. Just a few steps. The wind was already trying to lift him. It would be so easy to just stop. To end the pain, the disappointment, the suffocating burden of being useless. He squeezed his eyes shut, hot tears leaking from the corners. No. His mom. He couldn't do that to his mom. She had already cried enough for him. He couldn't be the cause of her ultimate sorrow. He pushed the thought away, horrified at himself. But its very presence was a testament to his brokenness. He was at the absolute bottom. There was no lower to go. He stayed there for what felt like an eternity, listening to the city breathe, a living organism he wasn't truly a part of. Eventually, the sobs subsided into a dull, throbbing ache. Numbness began to creep in, a merciful blanket over the raw wound of his spirit. He had to go home. He had to face his mom. He had to figure out what to do with the rest of his pointless life. With a groan, he pushed himself to his feet, his joints protesting. He took one last look at the sprawling metropolis, a silent goodbye to the dream he'd nurtured since he was 4 years old. He turned towards the rooftop access door, his shoulders slumped in a posture of utter defeat, and that's when the world glitched. For a single, disorienting moment, a pane of translucent, Azure blue light flickered into existence in the center of his vision. It was about the size of a book, shimmering with an energy that seemed utterly alien to the mundane world of brick and concrete. It vanished as quickly as it appeared. Izuku froze, blinking rapidly. He rubbed his eyes with the back of his hand. What was that? A trick of the light? A reflection from a distant window? He was emotionally and physically exhausted. It had to be a hallucination. He took another step, and it happened again. This time it stayed. A sharp, digital chime, clear as a bell but sounding like it was inside his own head, echoed through his consciousness. The blue rectangle solidified in his vision, hovering about 5 feet in front of him. Crisp, white text began to type itself across the screen, accompanied by soft, clicking sounds. System initializing. Stand by. Calibrating user biosignature. Izuku Midoriya. Scanning for genetic markers. Quirk factor negative. Latent metaphysical trigger detected. Source. Extreme emotional distress proximity to high-energy quirk singularity. Awakening protocol engaged. Welcome user. Izuku stared, his mouth agape. He waved a trembling hand in front of his face. His hand passed right through the image, causing it to ripple slightly, like the surface of a pond. It wasn't a projection. It wasn't on a screen. It was, in his vision. In his mind. What is this? He whispered, his voice hoarse. As if in response, the text vanished and was replaced by a new, larger block of information. New quirk manifested. Hero's journey. Rarity unique. Type mental growth emitter. Description. A quirk that quantifies and gamifies the path to heroism. The user is presented with a personal interface only they can perceive. By completing missions, training skills, and performing heroic deeds, the user earns experience points, EXP, to level up. Leveling up grants stat points and skill points, which can be allocated to facilitate physical and mental growth. This quirk does not grant power directly but provides the framework and opportunity to achieve one's ultimate potential. Izuku read the description once. Then twice. Then a third time. His analyst's brain, momentarily stunned, kicked back into gear, overriding his shock with a surge of frantic energy. A quirk? He had a quirk? After all this time? After the doctor with the glasses, the X-ray of his toe, the decade of mockery and pity? And it was a video game? This had to be a dream. Or a very, very cruel joke being played on him by his own shattered psyche. He was having a breakdown. That was the only logical explanation. He'd finally snapped on a rooftop after having his spirit crushed by his idol. This isn't real, he said aloud, trying to ground himself. He squeezed his eyes shut tight, then opened them again. The blue screen was still there, unwavering. With a surge of frustration, he tried to push it away, his hands swatting at the empty air where it seemed to float. Nothing. He tried to walk around it, but it remained perfectly centered in his field of view. It was a part of his perception now. Okay, Midoriya, think, he muttered, pacing back and forth on the rooftop, the blue screen following his gaze like a faithful, terrifying pet. If this is a hallucination, it's a remarkably detailed one. If it's a quirk, then everything just changed. The irony was so thick he could choke on it. A quirk about becoming a hero, manifesting on the very day he was told it was impossible. Was this his potential, fighting back? Or was it his desperation, building a fantasy to shield him from the truth? A new thought, a new command formed in his mind. Show me my status. As if he'd spoken a magic word, the screen flickered and changed. Status. Name, Izuku Midoriya. Level 1, EXP, 0/100. Title, Quirkless Civilian. HP, 25/25. MP, 80/80. Stats, Strength, STR1. Agility, AGI2. Endurance, END2. Intelligence, INT8. Wisdom, WIS7. Charisma, CHR3. Stat points available, 0. Izuku stared at the numbers, and a fresh wave of humiliation washed over him, even more acute than before. It was one thing to feel weak and scrawny. It was another thing entirely to have it quantified in stark, brutal numbers. Strength 1. A single, pathetic point. He had the physical prowess of a house cat. A very small house cat. His agility and endurance weren't much better. He was clumsy and had the stamina of an asthmatic snail. But then he saw his mental stats. Intelligence, 8, wisdom, 7, they were high. Very high in comparison. The system, this quirk, it recognized his mind. It knew his strength was his analysis, his notebooks, his frantic muttering. It saw value where everyone else saw weirdness. And his charisma. 3, yeah, that tracked. He could barely speak to a stranger without turning into a stuttering mess. The title, Quirkless Civilian, stung worst of all. It was a brand, a label assigned by this strange new power, confirming his place in the world. He thought of another command, his curiosity now a raging fire. Skill tree. The status screen was replaced by a breathtakingly vast, dark expanse, like a star chart of a galaxy. Thousands upon thousands of tiny, dim lights were scattered across it, connected by faint, ethereal lines. It was a web of infinite possibilities. In the very center was a single, brightly lit node, core skill tree, the hero's journey. Branching from it were several major, but currently unlit, hubs, combat, support, stealth, crafting, social. Each of these had countless subtrees, spiraling out into the darkness. It was a map of everything a hero could possibly be, and it was almost entirely locked. The only accessible branch was a tiny, pathetic-looking twig labeled General Skills. He mentally clicked on it. A small list appeared. Analysis, locked. Basic Academics, novice. Cooking, untrained. Cleaning, untrained. First aid, untrained. This was it. This was the sum total of his potential. A nascent ability to analyze, his school knowledge, and the skills of a person who had yet to learn how to properly take care of himself. It was both a monument to his current uselessness and a tantalizing promise of what he could unlock. He stood there on that rooftop for what must have been 20 minutes, just exploring. He was a lifelong gamer, an analyst. A system like this was a language he understood better than anything. Even if it was a hallucination, it was the most fascinating one he could have ever imagined. The despair that had anchored him was still there, but now it was joined by a frantic, bewildering spark of something. It wasn't hope, not yet. It was confusion wrapped in a layer of pure, unadulterated intrigue. Then, a distant sound broke his concentration. Kaboom! A muffled explosion echoed from a few blocks away. Izuku's head snapped up. Another villain attack? He dismissed it. It wasn't his problem. It couldn't be. He wasn't a hero. He was just a boy with a strange new hallucination. He started walking again, determined to get off this roof and go home. He trudged down the clanging metal fire escape, his mind a whirlwind of numbers and skill trees. He reached the alleyway below and began the walk home, his feet moving on autopilot. People were running past him, heading towards the commotion. He ignored them. Kaboom! Boom! The explosions were louder now, closer. He could smell smoke in the air, acrid and chemical. He recognized that smell. It was the smell of nitroglycerin sweat. It was the smell of Kakin. His steps faltered. A cold dread, entirely separate from his earlier despair, began to seep into his bones. He found himself near the entrance to the shopping district where he'd been attacked earlier. A huge crowd was gathered, their phones held high. Pro-heroes were on the scene, Kamui Woods, Death Arms, Backdraft, but they seemed helpless. Izuku pushed his way forward, a terrible premonition compelling him. And then he saw it, the same sludge villain from before. It was bigger now, angrier. And trapped within its swirling, viscous form was a thrashing figure with spiky ash-blonde hair, setting off explosions that only served to make the monster spread further. Bakugo. Time seemed to slow down. Izuku saw the desperation in Bakugo's eyes. It was the same terrified look he himself had worn just an hour ago. He was suffocating. He was fighting for his life. And the heroes, they couldn't do anything. They didn't have the right quirks to handle the situation. They were waiting for someone else. Izuku's heart hammered against his ribs. His body was frozen, just like before. All Might's words came back to him. I wasn't trying to lecture you, but my body moved on its own. His body wasn't moving. He was just another useless bystander. He was proving his idol right. He was a failure. And then, His entire field of vision flashed a violent, startling crimson. The blue screen was gone, replaced by a red one with a blaring, silent alarm. The text was stark, demanding his attention. It pulsed with a terrifying urgency. Urgent mission issued, a hero's first step. Description, a life is on the line. The heroes are stalled. Your rival, a boy intertwined with your own destiny, is suffocating. This is the moment a hero is born or a civilian is cemented. The choice is yours. Objective, intervene to save the victim from the sludge villain. Rewards, 500 EXP, 1 to all core stats. New skill unlocked, analysis. Failure penalty, permanent loss of the hero title. The hero's journey skill tree will be permanently locked. Izuku's breath hitched. He read the penalty again. Permanent loss of the hero title. The hero's journey skill tree will be permanently locked. This wasn't a game. This wasn't a hallucination he could ignore. This was his own quirk, this strange, impossible new part of his very being, issuing an ultimatum. It was holding up the single, most precious dream of his entire life and threatening to extinguish it forever. If he did nothing, he wouldn't just be the quirkless boy who couldn't be a hero. He would be the boy with a hero quirk who chose not to be. The thought was 1,000 times more damning. The system wasn't asking if he was strong enough. It wasn't asking if he had a plan. It was asking if he had the spirit. It was a test. The first and perhaps the last. Something inside him broke. The fear, the logic, the self-preservation, it all shattered. All that was left was the raw, screaming instinct of a boy who had idolized heroes for too long to stand by and watch someone die in front of him. His legs, which had been frozen solid, suddenly unlocked. He didn't even realize he was moving until he burst through the police barrier, the shouts of the heroes fading into a dull roar behind him. The world narrowed to a tunnel. At the end of that tunnel was Bakugo, his eyes pleading, and the slimy monster that was killing him. You idiot! Stop! Death Arms yelled. Izuku didn't hear him. His mind was racing, but it wasn't a frantic panic. It was the INT, 8 and WIS, 7 kicking into overdrive. What can I do? I have nothing. No power, no strength. Think. His eyes darted around, cataloging everything. The villain's body was fluid, physical attacks were useless. Its eyes were solid. Its teeth were solid. An opening. A weakness. His gaze fell to his own body, to the bright yellow backpack slung over his shoulder. It was heavy, filled with textbooks and his burned hero analysis notebook. It's not much, but it's not nothing. With a primal scream that was part terror and part defiance, he swung the backpack off his shoulder and hurled it with all his might. His STR-1 didn't give it much velocity, but his aim was true. The corner of a heavy physics textbook caught the sludge villain directly in its massive, bulging eye. The monster roared in pain and surprise, its fluid body flinching for a split second. Its grip on Bakugo's mouth loosened just enough. Kaken! Izuku screamed, his legs still pumping, carrying him forward on pure adrenaline. Bakugo gasped, dragging in a precious lungful of air. Deku? What the hell are you doing here? Izuku reached the villain, his hands clawing uselessly at the slime. It was like trying to dig through thick, sticky tar. I don't know, he cried, tears and sweat mixing on his face. My legs, they just started moving. He looked at Bakugo, at his childhood friend, his tormentor, his rival. You looked like you were asking for help. For a heartbeat, the anger in Bakugo's eyes was replaced by sheer, unadulterated shock. That heartbeat was all the time needed. A new voice, deep and resonant, boomed through the street. I really am pathetic. Izuku looked up. Standing there, his skeletal form suddenly seeming to ripple with nascent power, was All Might. I told you the traits that make a great hero, he said, his voice filled with self-recrimination and a dawning pride. But I see now I wasn't living up to my own ideals. The crowd gasped as Toshinori Yagi began to bulk up, steam rolling off his body. Pros are always risking their lives. That's the true test of a hero. With a final, explosive transformation, the symbol of peace was back, his iconic smile a grimace of furious determination. He grabbed Izuku, pulling him away from the danger. Detroit. Smash! A hurricane of wind pressure tore through the street. The sludge villain, which had been reforming to attack, was obliterated, its fluid body scattered into a million harmless droplets. The sky, which had been growing dark, suddenly cleared as the sheer force of the punch changed the weather pressure. It began to rain. Izuku lay on the wet pavement, gasping for air, his ears ringing. He had done it. He had moved. He had created an opening. He was an idiot. He was reckless. He was alive. The aftermath was a blur. The pro-heroes, after making sure he was okay, swarmed him. Not with praise, but with harsh scolding. There was absolutely no reason for you to put yourself in danger like that, son. Death Arms reprimanded, his voice stern. You're lucky we didn't have to rescue you too. Leave it to the pros. Meanwhile, other heroes were gathering around Bakugo, praising his bravery and his powerful quirk. The injustice of it stung, but Izuku was too overwhelmed to care. He had failed. He had just gotten in the way. He hadn't saved anyone, not really. All Might had done that. He felt the familiar despair begin to creep back in. Maybe the system was wrong. Maybe his one heroic act was just a fluke, a final, futile spasm of a dying dream. Then, a soft chime echoed in his head, and a brilliant blue screen, cool and calming, replaced the chaos of the world. Urgent mission, a hero's first step, complete, calculating results. Objective, intervene to save the victim. Success, analysis. Though physically ineffective, your action created a critical moment of distraction, enabling the victim to breathe and inspiring the stalled one hero to act. Heroic rating B. Rewards distributed. 500 EXP. LVL up. Izuku Midoriya is now LVL 2, 5 stat points available. 1 to all core stats. A warm, invigorating sensation flooded Izuku's body. It wasn't a physical change he could see, but he felt it. The exhaustion in his muscles lessened. The ache in his bones faded. The world seemed a little sharper, a little clearer. He felt more solid. Less like a leaf in the wind and more like a sapling with roots. He quickly checked his status in his mind. Stats: Strength, STR2-1, Agility, AGI3-1, Endurance, END3-1, Intelligence, INT9-1, Wisdom, WIS8-1, Charisma, CHR4-1. The numbers had all gone up by 1. It wasn't a huge jump, but it was real. It was tangible progress. He had earned this. A genuine, hysterical giggle escaped his lips. Another notification popped up. New skill unlocked. Analysis, LVL1. Type, active/passive. Cost, 1 MP per minute active. Description, the user's innate talent for observation and deduction is quantified. Passively, it provides basic information on familiar objects or individuals. When activated, it allows for a detailed scan of a target, revealing their name, level, title, and other pertinent, non-hidden information. At higher levels, it can identify weaknesses, predict movement patterns, and analyze quirk mechanics. A new tool. A way to turn his greatest strength, his mumbling, obsessive analysis, into a legitimate power. Without thinking, he activated it. A faint blue shimmer coated his vision, and the world was suddenly overlaid with information. He looked at Kamui Woods, who was giving a statement to the press. Shinji Nishiya, Kamui Woods, LVL 38. Title, The Arbor Hero. Threat level, mid-tier pro. He glanced at a nearby lamppost. Lamppost. Type, municipal infrastructure. HP, 150/150. Structural integrity, 98%. His eyes finally landed on Bakugo, who was shrugging off the praise with his usual arrogance, though Izuku could see the slight tremor in his hands. Katsuki Bakugo, LVL 12. Title, Explosive Prodigy. Status, Annoyed, Adrenaline Crash. Threat level high for level 12. The number was another shock. Bakugo was, quantitatively, leagues ahead of him. But for the first time in his life, Izuku didn't feel despair looking at that gap. He saw a goal. He saw a mountain he could now, finally, begin to climb. He deactivated the skill, the flow of information ceasing. He had a quirk. A real one. It wasn't flashy like Bakugo's, or powerful like All Might's, but it was his. It was a path. DKU! He flinched as Bakugo stormed over to him, his face a thunderous scowl. I didn't need you to save me. I had it handled. You didn't help, you got it? You did nothing. You're still a quirkless, useless wannabe. Bakugo spun on his heel and stomped off, leaving Izuku in his wake. The words, which would have shattered him an hour ago, now felt hollow. They didn't have the same power over him. Because he knew a secret. He knew he wasn't quirkless anymore. As he turned to finally, truly head home, a familiar voice stopped him. I am here! Izuku turned to see All Might, in his skinny form, jogging to catch up. All Might! Why are you here? You were surrounded by reporters. Getting away from them is child's play for me, he boomed, before coughing up a frightening amount of blood. The secret to my escape is leaving before they can ask questions. He stood before Izuku, his expression unreadable for a moment. He looked at the boy who had run into danger, the boy he had told to be realistic. Young man, I came to thank you. And to apologize. And to make a proposition. He took a deep breath. If you hadn't been there, if you hadn't told me your story, I would have been nothing but a fake, talking the talk but not walking the walk. So, thank you? Izuku shook his head, overwhelmed. Oh no, it was my fault to begin with. I got in your way and wasted your time. That's not true. All Might interrupted, his voice firm. It was because you, a quirkless, timid boy, were the only one who acted that I was moved to act as well. The top heroes all have stories about their school days. Most of them have one thing in common. Their bodies moved before they had a chance to think. All Might's words washed over Izuku. His own words thrown back at him, but this time as a validation. That's what happened to you, wasn't it? Izuku couldn't speak. He could only clutch his chest, the tears he'd been holding back finally spilling over. But these were not tears of despair. They were tears of catharsis, of relief, of a joy so profound it was painful. All Might looked at the sobbing boy, his own eyes shining. He smiled, a true, genuine smile that held none of the bravado of his hero form, but all of its warmth. He raised a hand and pointed at Izuku. You too can become a hero. The 7 most beautiful words Izuku had ever heard. They were the key that unlocked his soul. The world, which had been gray and hopeless, burst into vibrant color. His dream wasn't dead. It had been beaten, battered, and left for dead on a rooftop, but it was alive. It was alive, and it was real. And as he stood there, crying his heart out, one final notification appeared in his vision. It was different from the others. The text wasn't blue or red, but a brilliant, shining gold. It felt ancient, powerful, and overwhelmingly significant. Main scenario quest accepted. The symbol of peace's legacy. Description: the current symbol of peace has chosen you. His power, a torch passed down through generations, is now within your reach. Can you prove yourself worthy of inheriting it? Can you build a body and spirit capable of wielding a power that can save the world, or shatter your own bones to dust? The journey will be arduous. The trials will be immense. But at the end of the path lies the chance to become the hero you were always meant to be. Current objective: prove your worth. Await further instructions from the quest giver, All Might. Izuku stared at the golden words through his tear-blurred vision. A hallucination wouldn't know this. A trick of the mind couldn't predict the single most important moment of his life. This was real. His quirk was real. And his journey, his hero's journey, had just begun. The world had tilted on its axis. For 10 years, Izuku Midoriya's universe had been a flat, gray plane of existence, governed by the immutable law of his own inadequacy. Now, in the span of a single, chaotic hour, it had become a vibrant, terrifying, three-dimensional space of infinite possibility. He was walking home, but his feet weren't quite touching the pavement. All Might, in his skeletal, true form, walked beside him, a comforting, if somewhat macabre, presence in the twilight. You too can become a hero. The words were a melody playing on a loop in his head, a stark contrast to the cacophony of his own frantic thoughts. He kept stealing glances at the man beside him, the symbol of peace incognito, and then at the translucent blue quest log that hovered in the corner of his vision. Main scenario quest accepted. The symbol of peace's legacy. It was all too much. His brain, which prided itself on its INT, 9 score, felt like it was short-circuiting. So, All Might, sir? Izuku began, his voice barely a squeak. What you said, about inheriting, what did you mean exactly? Toshinori Yagi let out a tired sigh, which turned into a wet cough. He wiped his mouth with a handkerchief. Straight to the point, I like that. It means exactly what it sounds like, my boy. My quirk is not one I was born with. It was passed on to me. He paused under a street lamp, and its pale light cast long shadows from his gaunt frame. The name of my quirk is One for All. Izuku's breath caught. 1. For. All. The name itself felt heavy, ancient. The quirk works in two ways. All Might continued, holding up a finger. First, it allows the user to stockpile an immense amount of raw power. Second, and more importantly, it can be passed on from one person to another, like a sacred torch. With each new bearer, the power they cultivated in their lifetime is added to the core, strengthening the quirk for the next generation. Izuku's mind, the ever-present analyst, went into overdrive. A stockpiling quirk that's transferable. That's like nothing in the official quirk registries. The transfer mechanism, is it genetic? Does it require a specific compatibility? How does the energy not degrade over time? Does it violate the laws of thermodynamics? The stored power must have a physical component, a biological battery of some kind, but to store that much energy without catastrophic cellular decay is… Whoa there, kid! Slow down! All Might laughed, a wheezing, rattling sound. You're thinking too hard. It's less about science and more about will. The bearer chooses a successor, and that successor ingests a sample of the bearer's DNA. That's it, Izuku blinked. Ingest DNA? Eat one of my hairs, for example. All Might said with a completely straight face. Izuku's brain rebooted. Alright. Hair. Of course, the gravity of the situation settled back in. But why me? He asked, his voice trembling. Out of everyone. I'm quirkless. I'm nobody. You could give this to any pro-hero, to someone like Mirio Togata from UA. His power is incredible, he's strong, he's like a perfect candidate. It's true, there are many who are stronger and more prepared than you are right now. All Might admitted, his gaze softening. But power can be trained. Spirit cannot. Today, at the scene of that villain attack, every other hero, myself included, was frozen. We were weighing the odds, waiting for the right quirk. But you, with no power at all, were the only one who ran in. You moved. In that moment, you were more of a hero than anyone else there. He placed a large, bony hand on Izuku's shoulder. I was looking for a successor with a true, heroic heart. And I believe I've found one in you, young Midoriya. I want to give you my power. Izuku felt the pressure building behind his eyes again. He, Izuku Midoriya, the useless Deku, was being told he had the heart of a hero by the greatest hero of all time. It was invalidation so profound it physically hurt. Before he could spiral into another crying fit, his system chimed. It was a subtle, analytical sound this time. Analysis skill is passively collecting data on conversation topic. One for all. New keyword detected. Legacy power source. Compiling data. Cross-referencing with quirk. Hero's journey. The system was listening. It was learning. This wasn't just a simple interface. It was an intelligent, reactive part of him. There's a catch, of course, All Might said, pulling him from his thoughts. One for All is a hurricane of pure power. A normal, unprepared body would explode from the strain. Your limbs would fly off. Izuku paled, imagining his END-3 body trying to contain All Might's power. The image was not pretty. You need to become a proper vessel first, All Might declared, a fire lighting in his eyes. You have 10 months until the UA entrance exam. Starting tomorrow, your training begins. A grueling, hellish training that will push you to your absolute limits. It's my personal American dream plan to get you in shape. He gave Izuku a thumbs up, his grin wide and terrifying. I'll email you the details tonight. Meet me at Dagoba Municipal Beach Park at sunrise. Don't be late. With that, he turned and jogged off into the darkness, leaving Izuku standing alone on the sidewalk, his world completely and irrevocably remade. When Izuku finally got home, his mother met him at the door, her face a mask of frantic worry. He mumbled some excuse about getting caught up in a villain attack investigation, a half-truth that barely placated her. He wolfed down the katsudon she had saved for him, a celebration meal for a success he hadn't even dared to dream of, and retreated to the safety of his room. His room was a shrine to All Might. Posters, action figures, bedsheets, limited edition cereal boxes. It was the fortress of his childhood dream. Now, it felt different. The irony was suffocating. The man on his walls was about to become his personal trainer and give him his quirk. He sat on his desk chair, the computer screen dark, and just breathed. He needed a moment to process. He mentally pulled up his status screen. Name, Izuku Midoriya, Level 2, EXP, 500/200. Wait! He whispered. He focused on the EXP bar. It was full, and then some. A notification he missed in the chaos popped up. EXP threshold reached. LVL up. Izuku Midoriya is now LVL 3, EXP, 300/300. EXP threshold reached. LVL up. Izuku Midoriya is now LVL 4, EXP, 0/400. 10 stat points available. He'd leveled up twice more just from that one mission. The B rating must have granted bonus EXP. He now had a total of 15 stat points to allocate. A feeling of giddy power, something he had never experienced before, bubbled up in his chest. Okay, focus, he told himself, taking a deep breath. He needed to understand the tools he'd been given. He pulled up the analysis skill description again. Allows for a detailed scan of a target. He had All Might's contact information now. An email address and a phone number for emergencies. Could it work on just a name? He focused on the contact in his phone, a simple entry, All Might. He activated the skill. His vision shimmered. The simple text of the contact name was replaced by a data block that made his blood run cold. Tashinori Yagi, All Might. LDL? Title, The Symbol of Peace. HP, censored due to user level disparity. Stats, Strength, STR? Agility, AGI? Endurance, END? Intelligence, INT? Wisdom, WIS? Charisma, CHR? Status, critically injured permanent, power source depleting, rapidly, threat level, error, value too high to compute. Izuku stared, his mouth dry. Question marks. His level was so pitifully low that the system couldn't even begin to quantify the sheer scale of All Might's power. It was like trying to measure the sun with a teaspoon. The only readable information was the status effects, and they were horrifying. Critically injured. Power source depleting. It confirmed what All Might had told him about his injury and his time limit. He was a dying star, and he was trying to give his last light to Izuku. The weight of that responsibility was immense. As he was processing this, another screen, this one framed in a sturdy, stone-like border, materialized in his vision. Legacy power source identified, one for all. Analyzing power structure. Stockpile. Transfer. Generational growth. New quest line generated. The path of power. A list appeared below the header. A series of grand, long-term objectives that would define his entire journey. World quest. Reclaim Dagoba Beach. Description. The chosen training ground is a testament to societal neglect, a literal mountain of trash. To build a body worthy of one for all, you must first move a mountain. Clean 100% of the beach within the 10-month time limit. Objective. Reach 100% cleanup progress. Rewards. 10,000 EXP. Title. Eco Warrior. 20 base endurance END. 15 base strength STR. Unlocks passive skill. Body conditioning. Failure. You will be deemed an unworthy vessel. Questline The Path of Power fails. 10,000 experience points. It was an astronomical number. And the base stat increases were separate from level up points. This was a foundational quest, designed to literally build him from the ground up. The system wasn't done. The world quest has been broken down into repeatable subquests. Daily quest. The first haul. Objective. Haul 500 kilograms of scrap metal to the collection point. Reward, 25 EXP, 10 credits. Daily quest, Cardio Foundation. Objective, run 5 kilometers. Reward, 15 EXP. Weekly quest, sectional cleanup. Objective, clear designated beach section, e.g. C4. Reward, 200 EXP, bonus loot box small. Izuku's eyes widened. Credits? Loot boxes? The gamification was more detailed than he thought. It broke down an impossible task into a manageable, rewarding grind. This was a system built for someone like him, someone who thrived on data, progress bars, and clear objectives. All Might was going to give him the what. His quirk was giving him the how. The final piece of the puzzle was his own growth. He had 15 stat points. He looked at his base stats again. STR2 AGI 3 END 3, pathetic. All Might had said his body would explode. The priority was clear. He needed to be able to survive. He mentally navigated to the stat allocation screen. With a deep sense of resolve, he began to invest. Allocate 8 points to endurance? Y/N. Yes. Allocate 7 points to strength? Y/N. Yes. A pleasant warmth spread through his limbs, more subtle than the level-up surge, but noticeable. It was a feeling of potential, of reinforcement. He felt denser, more solid. He checked his status again. Strength, STR9, Agility, AGI 3, Endurance, END 11. The numbers were still low, but they were no longer completely pathetic. It was a start. He was level 4, with a STR of 9 and an END of 11. He wasn't a hero. He wasn't even an athlete, but for the first time in his life, he wasn't completely, utterly fragile. He finally checked his email. All Might's American Dream Plan was there. It was a dizzying schedule of sleep times, meal plans, workout regimens, and study hours. It was intense, comprehensive, and utterly overwhelming, but as Izuku looked at it, his hero's journey interface overlaid itself. All Might's 60 kilograms deadlifts became part of the daily quest, the first haul. The morning jog was cardio foundation. The system didn't replace All Might's plan. It enhanced it, gamifying every single aspect and promising a tangible reward for every drop of sweat. A real smile, the first one that day that wasn't born of shock or relief, touched Izuku's lips. He could do this. It would be hell. But he could do this. Sunrise at Dagoba Beach was not a picturesque event. The light didn't glint off gentle waves. It revealed the true, staggering scale of the disaster. Mountains of rusted appliances, tangled fishing nets, broken furniture, and rotting bags of garbage were piled high, stretching from the seawall to the water's edge. The air smelled of salt, rust, and decay. It was a graveyard of human consumption. Izuku stood before it, feeling very small. The 100% cleanup progress bar in his quest log seemed like an impossible goal. "Good morning, young Midoriya!" All Might's voice boomed. He was standing atop a rusted refrigerator, looking like a triumphant gargoyle. "A fine mountain of effort, isn't it? Every bit of this was illegally dumped over the years, and the ocean currents brought even more. This is the first step on your road to heroism, community service." He hopped down, landing silently. "This is your gym. Your task is to move all of this." "All of it," Izuku swallowed hard. "All of it, all of it." All Might confirmed, his smile unwavering. "According to my plan, you'll start with the smaller items, build up your muscle groups, and by the end, you'll be hauling these fridges like they're empty cardboard boxes. Now, let's get started." The first few days were pure, unadulterated agony. Izuku's newfound STR, 9 and END, 11 felt like nothing in the face of reality. His first task was to move a collection of old, waterlogged truck tires. Each one was a struggle. His muscles screamed, his back ached, and his hands were quickly rubbed raw, even through his work gloves. After nearly an hour of torturous labor, he finally managed to drag the last of a small pile to the designated collection zone. He collapsed onto the sand, his lungs burning, his body trembling with exhaustion. Then the chime. Daily quest, the first haul, complete, reward, 25 EXP, 10 credits. A tiny sliver of his EXP bar filled. It was almost imperceptible, but it was there. The feeling of accomplishment was a potent drug. It was a direct, tangible reward for his suffering. He pushed himself back up, his body protesting, and looked at the next task on All Might's list, a 5-kilometer run along the sandy shore. Daily quest, cardio foundation initiated. He groaned and started to jog, his feet sinking into the soft sand, making every step a Herculean effort. This became his life. Every morning before school, every evening after, and all day on weekends he was at the beach. Hauling, running, lifting, sweating. All Might was a relentless taskmaster, constantly adjusting his schedule, critiquing his form, and shouting encouragement from atop a pile of scrap. After the first week, Izuku leveled up. LVL up. Izuku Midoriya is now LVL 5, 5 stat points available. He didn't hesitate. He dumped 3 points into endurance, and 2 into strength. The next morning, the tires felt marginally lighter. The run was a fraction less agonizing. The progress was slow, so slow it was almost invisible day to day. But the system saw it. The numbers were going up. The first month passed in a blur of pain and small victories. He had cleared a noticeable, if small, patch of the beach. His body was already changing. The soft roundness of his face was beginning to sharpen, and the perpetually noodly arms now had a hint of wiry muscle. He was always hungry, devouring mountains of food that his mother cooked with a worried expression. His system helpfully quantified these meals. Consumed, large katsudon with extra rice. Buff acquired, well-fed. 5% stamina regen for 3 hours. All Might watched his progress with growing astonishment. Young Midoriya, your progress is remarkable, he said one afternoon, watching Izuku successfully deadlift a rusted washing machine, something that should have been beyond his reach for at least another 2 months according to the plan. Your dedication is superb, but this rate of improvement is almost unnatural. Izuku paused, wiping sweat from his brow. He had been waiting for this question. He couldn't tell him about the system. It was his own quirk, his secret. He had to use the half-truth he'd prepared. Well, it's my quirk, All Might, he said, trying to sound casual. All Might froze. Your quirk? Yeah, Izuku continued, starting to mumble. It's not a physical one, it manifested really late. It's kind of embarrassing. It helps me organize my thoughts and see things more clearly, like a built-in analysis tool. It lets me break down big problems into smaller, manageable steps. So for your American Dream plan, I just made a more detailed version. I can track my caloric intake, my muscle fatigue, my optimal rest periods. It's all just hyper-organized planning, really. It lets me work more efficiently. It was the perfect lie because it was mostly true. He was using his quirk to do exactly that. He just omitted the parts about EXP, stat points, and loot boxes. All Might stared at him, his mind working. An intelligence and analysis quirk? It made a strange kind of sense. The boy's obsessive muttering, his detailed notebooks, it all fit. It also explained his uncanny ability to push himself to the absolute limit without causing serious injury. His quirk was probably warning him. A quirk that optimizes self-improvement. All Might mused aloud. How wonderfully practical! And it explains how you managed to analyze the sludge villain's weakness so quickly. So you have both the heart of a hero and the mind of a strategist. Excellent. He clapped Izuku on the back, hard enough to make him stumble. The cover story had worked. The months wore on. Level 6. Level 10. Level 15. Each level up brought a fresh wave of energy, a new allocation of points into strength and endurance. His agility was still lagging, but he was building his foundation first. The weekly loot boxes often contain minor healing potions, reduces muscle soreness debuff by 25%, or temporary stat-boosting snacks, which he used to push through particularly tough days. Around the 5-month mark, a typhoon hit the coast. It was a major setback. The storm's surge washed a whole new flotilla of garbage onto the shore, undoing weeks of his hard work. All Might was grim, worried they had lost too much time. Izuku, however, saw a different notification. World event, typhoon aftermath. Bonus mission, storm cleanup. Objective, clear all new debris within 1 week. Reward 1000 bonus EXP, rare loot box, medium. It's okay, All Might, Izuku said, a determined glint in his eye. It's not a setback, it's an opportunity. He attacked the new piles of junk with a ferocious energy. He was level 18 now. His strength and endurance scores were both approaching 40. He was a far cry from the fragile boy who could barely lift a tire. He found a half-buried, industrial-sized freezer, a monster of rusted metal and waterlogged insulation. He spent an entire afternoon digging it out, and then, with a mighty roar that echoed across the empty beach, he deadlifted it. His muscles screamed, his vision spotted, but he held it. All Might watched from a distance, his skeletal form silhouetted against the gray sky, a look of pure, unadulterated awe on his face. The boy wasn't just following the plan. He was devouring it. The final month arrived. The beach was almost unrecognizable. Golden sand stretched out where mountains of trash had once stood. There was only one section left, the largest and most dense pile, centered around a derelict, half-smashed bus. This was the final boss. Izuku was level 25. His body was lean and corded with hard-earned muscle, a map of his 10-month ordeal. He attacked the final pile with the last dregs of his energy, his body running on pure willpower and the promise of the quest complete screen. On the morning of the UA entrance exam, 10 months to the day after he began, it was done. The sun rose over a completely clean Dagoba beach. The waves gently lapped at a pristine shoreline. The air was fresh and clean. Izuku stood atop the stripped chassis of the bus, the very last piece of trash, which had been dragged to the enormous collection pile to be hauled away. He was exhausted, sore, and trembling, but he was triumphant. He raised his arms to the sky and let out a roar of pure, primal victory, a sound that came from the very depths of his soul. Oh my goodness! He looked down. All Might was standing on the sand below, holding up a phone. He looked from the phone's picture of the trash-filled beach to the glorious, clean vista before him, then to the boy standing atop the bus. He was shaking. "You did it, young Midoriya," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You did more than I ever expected. You're ready." He transformed, his body bulking up to its magnificent hero form, though he looked strained. "No," he boomed, plucking a single strand of his iconic golden hair. "For your reward." He held it out. "Eat this." Izuku looked at the hair, then at All Might's dead serious face. The system, for once, was silent. "Right now!" he squeaked. All the epic grandeur of the moment suddenly curdled into pure awkwardness. "To inherit the power, you must ingest my DNA. This is the quickest way," All Might insisted. "Hurry! We don't have much time before the exam." With a deep sense of resignation and a silent prayer that this wasn't some kind of elaborate prank, Izuku took the hair. He pinched his nose, closed his eyes, and swallowed it. It went down with a tickle. He waited. Nothing happened. I don't feel any different," he said, confused. "Of course not. It has to be digested. It'll kick in soon enough. Now go home, get showered, and get to the exam hall. Your journey is just beginning." Izuku nodded, still feeling slightly anticlimactic, and started the jog home. He was halfway there when it happened. It didn't start as a glow. It started as a spark, deep in his stomach, where the hair was being digested. The spark didn't fizzle out. It exploded. A cataclysm of raw, untamed energy erupted through his system. It felt like being struck by lightning from the inside out. A roaring, fiery power surged through his veins, a tidal wave of force that his body was in no way prepared for. Every cell screamed. It was too much. It was a universe of power crammed into a teacup. His vision went white with a flood of crimson alerts. The serene blue of his interface was gone, replaced by a screaming emergency broadcast. "Warning, unstable power source detected. Analyzing foreign energy. Source, one for all. Type, generational stockpile quirk. Energy level exceeds user's physical tolerance by 9,874%. Body integrity compromised. Current vessel stability, 35% and dropping. Catastrophic cellular disintegration imminent. Pain, white-hot and absolute, lanced through him. He collapsed to his knees on the sidewalk, a choke scream tearing from his throat. This is what All Might meant. Your limbs will fly off. He could feel his body starting to tear itself apart at a molecular level. But his quirk, his own strange, wonderful quirk, wasn't just a warning system. It was a management system. As the chaos raged, new notifications, stark and logical, began to cut through the red alerts. New skill tree unlocked. One for all. This tree is currently 99% locked due to insufficient user level and vessel stability. System attempting to create a regulatory protocol. Analyzing power flow. Uncontrolled. Concentrating in extremities. Formulating safety measure. A basal level, full body energy distribution circuit is required to prevent overload. New skill acquired. Full cowl, LVL1. Description. A technique to channel the immense power of one for all throughout the entire body instead of concentrating it in one limb. This allows for a general increase in all physical abilities at a manageable level. Current maximum safe output, 0.1%. Cost, drains vessel stability while active. Drain rate decreases as skill level and user stats increase. It was a lifeline. A key. It was the solution presented at the moment of crisis. The pain was still unbearable, but now he had a path. He had a command to execute. Another quest log, urgent and simple, flashed before his eyes. Mission, survive the power. Objective, activate full cowl, LVL1, to stabilize the flow of one for all and prevent bodily destruction. Reward, 5 base END, unlocks OFA percentage control sub-skill. Failure, death. Gritting his teeth against the agony, his body trembling violently, Izuku focused his entire will on the new skill in his mind. He didn't know how, but he knew he had to. He had to spread the power. He had to turn the raging, focused inferno into a manageable, all-encompassing warmth. Full cowl, activate. He felt a subtle shift. The agonizing pressure in his arms and legs lessened as a faint, almost imperceptible web of energy began to form across his skin, a circuit for the storm raging within. His vessel stability bar, which had been plummeting, slowed its descent. It wasn't enough to stop the pain, but it was enough to survive. He was on his hands and knees, panting and shaking, but he was alive. The first trial of one for all wasn't a villain or a test. It was simply enduring the gift. And thanks to his own quirk, he had just barely passed. Pain was the first sensation, a throbbing, full-body echo of the atomic storm that had just raged through his veins. The second was the chilling realization that he was still alive. Izuku pushed himself up from the cracked pavement, his arms trembling not from weakness, but from containing a power so vast it felt like holding back the ocean with a picket fence. He was a walking, talking nuclear reactor with a faulty control rod. He took a shaky breath, the cool morning air doing little to quell the fire in his gut. The mission, survive the power screen, was still burned into his vision, the word complete a testament to his narrow escape. The rewards had already been distributed. A wave of fortitude, deeper and more fundamental than a simple stat boost, had settled into his bones, the 5 base END. His body felt denser, his core more stable. He was still a teacup, but now it was a teacup made of reinforced ceramic instead of fine china. The most important reward, however, was the new sub-skill. OFA percentage control. It appeared as a small slider bar at the bottom of his interface, currently locked at a default of 0.1%. It was a regulator, a safety valve. He focused his will, the same way he allocated stat points. He tentatively activated full cowl. There was no grand explosion of light. No dramatic surge of power. It was far more subtle. A faint, low hum vibrated through his entire being, a current of energy so minuscule he might have missed it if not for the system. A thin, almost invisible web of pale green energy traced itself across his skin, visible only to him. It felt like bracing for an impact that was already happening. The chaotic, destructive energy of one for all, which had threatened to tear him apart, was now flowing in a controlled, looping circuit. His vessel stability bar, which had been fluctuating dangerously, now held steady at a precarious but non-lethal 42%. The system showed a slow, almost negligible drain on it while full cowl was active. This was it. This was the key to not exploding. It offered no real combat advantage. A 0.1% boost to his stats was a rounding error, but it was the difference between being a vessel and being a bomb. He had to get home. He had to get to UA. The short jog back to his apartment was a masterclass in concentration. Every step was a conscious effort to maintain the delicate balance of power. He felt like he was carrying a brimming full bowl of nitroglycerin. One stumble, one loss of focus, and the energy might spike, a feedback loop of destruction. His mother met him at the door, her usual morning cheerfulness evaporating into a cloud of worry. Izuku! What happened? You look pale as a ghost. Did you overdo it on your run? I'm fine, Mom, really? He lied, forcing a smile that felt brittle. Just pre-exam jitters, I guess. It's a big day, he couldn't tell her. He couldn't tell her that he was currently wrestling with a demigod's power source in his stomach. He quickly showered, the hot water a blessed relief on his perpetually tense muscles, and changed into his school uniform for the last time. As he ate his breakfast, he was a portrait of forced calm, while inside, his mind was a whirlwind of activity, constantly monitoring the full call status, the stability percentage, the low thrum of apocalyptic power held in check. The train ride to UA High was surreal. He was surrounded by other teenagers, all buzzing with nervous energy, their quirks practically vibrating in the air. A girl with chameleon skin kept blending into the seat. A boy was idly spinning a small ball of fire around his fingers. They were all hopefuls, just like him. But none of them, he suspected, were actively fighting to prevent their own body from undergoing spontaneous, catastrophic disassembly. He kept his head down, his gaze fixed on his lap, but his mind was elsewhere, reviewing the data. His level was 25. His strength and endurance were both in the 40s, respectable for a baseline human, but pitiful for a UA applicant. And now he had one for all, a power that registered as error, value too high to compute. It was the ultimate paradox. He was simultaneously one of the weakest and the strongest people in this train car. He arrived at the hallowed gates of UA High. The school was a monument of gleaming glass and steel, the iconic H-shaped building a symbol of everything he had ever dreamed of. It was intimidating, awe-inspiring, and terrifying. As he took his first step onto the grounds, a new notification pinged, clean and professional. New location discovered, UA High School. Quest updated, the symbol of Peace's legacy. Current objective, pass the entrance exam and be accepted into the hero course. This was it. No turning back. The written portion of the exam was held first, in a series of massive classrooms. For Izuku, it was almost a reprieve. He could sit still, focus, and let the INT 9 and WIS 8 of his system-honed mind do the work. Questions on history, ethics, mathematics, and quirk theory that might have stumped others seemed straightforward to him. His brain, now accustomed to processing huge amounts of data from his analysis skill, parsed the questions with startling efficiency. Quest complete, written exam, grade S, reward 50 EXP. It was a small victory, but it was a confidence booster. He had passed the first hurdle. Now came the real test. He found himself shuffled into a colossal auditorium, filled with hundreds of other applicants. The sheer number of them was overwhelming. The air was thick with ambition, anxiety, and the faint, ozone smell of latent power. Izuku found a seat next to a boy with spiky red hair and sharpened teeth, trying to make himself as small as possible. Suddenly, the lights dimmed and a single, powerful voice ripped through the silence. "What's up, UA applicants? Welcome to today's live performance." On stage, bathed in spotlights, was the voice hero, Present Mike. He was a whirlwind of leather, hair gel, and sonic energy. Izuku's analysis skill, which he'd kept on a low, passive burn, automatically flared to life. Hisashi Yamada, Present Mike, LVL, 72, title, The Voice Hero, status, hyped, threat level, High-Tier Pro, situational, note, recommended equipment, earplugs. Izuku almost choked. The system had a sense of humor. "Everybody say hey!" Mike screamed. Silence. Utter deafening silence. Izuku felt a pang of second-hand embarrassment for the hero. "Tough crowd," Mike muttered before launching into the explanation of the practical exam. "Like your application said, today you rockin' boys and girls will be out there conducting 10-minute mock urban battles. Gimme a yeah!" More silence. The screen behind Mike lit up with images of 3 distinct robots. "The deal is that you'll be punching your tickets to this school by racking up points knocking out these faux villains. Each one has a different point value. 1, 2, or 3 points. Your goal is to use your quirk to immobilize them and get as many points as you can." As Mike spoke, Izuku's mind was already racing. His system was trying to build profiles based on the images and descriptions. Analyzing target, 1-point bot. Estimated armor, low. Estimated speed, medium. Probable weakness, exposed optic sensor. Analyzing target, 2-point bot. Estimated armor, medium. Estimated speed, low. Probable weakness, unstable wheel-based locomotion. Analyzing target, 3-point bot. Estimated armor, high. Estimated speed, high. Probable weakness, exposed power conduits on back. His muttering started, quiet at first, then growing in volume as he processed the data. So the 3-pointers are high risk, high reward, but their speed makes them difficult targets for someone with low agility. The 2-pointers are slower, easier to outmaneuver, but their armor might be too tough for my baseline strength. The 1-pointers are the grunts, probably designed to swarm and overwhelm. The key isn't to fight them head-on, it's to use the environment. If I can lure a 2-pointer into an alley and jam its wheels, or drop debris on a 1-pointer from above, that's more efficient than direct combat. And you, with the messy green hair, Izuku jumped as if electrocuted. A spotlight swiveled and slammed down on him. A tall, well-built boy with glasses stood up several rows ahead, his arm chopping the air with rigid precision. You have been muttering this entire time. It is distracting and unbecoming of a potential UE student. If you think this is some kind of joke, then you should leave immediately. Izuku's face flushed crimson. All eyes were on him. His CHR-4 stat screamed at him to curl up into a ball and disappear. He shot a quick analysis at his accuser out of pure, panicked instinct. Tenya Ida, LVL, 15. Title, Ingenium's successor. Status, dutiful, righteous. Note, possesses a strong moral compass and a literal stick up his. Redacted. Izuku's system was definitely sentient. And sassy. Apologies. Izuku stammered, bowing his head in shame. Present Mike waved it off. All right, examinee 7111, take it easy. Now, moving on to the main event. There's a 4th type of villain. Worth 0 points. He's the gimmick. An arena trap you should avoid at all costs. The screen showed a colossal, building-sized robot silhouette. Izuku's system immediately flagged it. Analyzing target, 0-point bot obstacle. Estimated armor, catastrophic. Estimated power, overwhelming. Threat level, extreme. Avoid. 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 The message was clear. The 0-pointer was not part of the test. It was the test's natural disaster. Soon after, they were herded onto buses and taken to their respective battle centers. Izuku found himself at Battle Center B. The entrance was a massive gate sealing off a sprawling, detailed cityscape. It was eerily quiet. He stood amidst a new crowd of applicants, each one sizing up the competition. He spotted the girl with the brown bob cut from the entrance. He saw the angry, righteous boy with glasses, Ida, stretching his muscular legs. And at the far side of the crowd, practically radiating explosive energy, was Bakugo. Their eyes met for a fraction of a second. Bakugo's expression was one of pure, contemptuous disbelief that Izuku had even made it this far. Izuku ignored him. He had bigger problems. He took a deep, centering breath and activated full cowl. The familiar, low-level thrum of the 0.1% output coursed through him. It was his new baseline. It was his survival mode. Just then, the official mission flashed into view. Exam mission, pass the practical. Description, the final gateway to your dream. Prove that your 10 months of hell were not in vain. Prove that you belong here. Objective, score at least 60 points, villain rescue. Rewards, 1,500 EXP. Title, UA applicant, entry to UA hero course. Failure, crushing disappointment, 60 points. The number seemed immense. He looked around at the other examinees, their quirks primed and ready. A boy with metallic skin. A girl with floating, disembodied hands. How was he supposed to compete with that? And start! Present Mick's voice blared from hidden speakers. The massive gates slid open. For a split second, everyone was frozen. Then, like a dam breaking, the crowd surged forward. Ida shot past everyone, a blue flare from his calves propelling him like a rocket. Bakugo blasted himself into the air with a deafening boom. Izuku was a half-second behind, his mind still catching up. A small, encouraging go flashed in his UI. He broke into a sprint, his AGI 3 feeling sluggish compared to the superpowered teens around him. He was immediately left in the dust. He rounded a corner and came face to face with his first opponent. A 1-point bot, rolling towards him on a single wheel, its red optic sensor glowing menacingly. Panic flared, but his training took over. Don't brawl. Be smart. He didn't have OFA-enhanced strength to rely on. He had his own, hard-earned STR-9. He ducked behind a parked car as the bot fired a weak laser beam that sizzled against the metal. He took a risk. He channeled his full cowl, trying to push the slider bar. 1%. 2%. Warning, unstable output. Risk of limb damage, 45%. He immediately throttled back. He couldn't risk it. Not yet. He had to rely on his base stats and his brain. He looked around. Rubble. A broken piece of rebar lay on the ground. An idea sparked. He waited for the bot to round the car, then he darted out. He didn't attack it. He ran past it, his movements clumsy but effective. The bot swiveled to follow, its single wheel turning. As it did, Izuku, with a grunt of effort, shoved the length of rebar into the spokes of the wheel. Crunch. The bot's momentum was its undoing. It flipped over, its wheel jamming catastrophically. It flailed on the ground, immobilized. Target disabled. 1 villain point. A grin split Izuku's face. It worked. He hadn't destroyed it. He had outsmarted it. This was his path. He spent the next few minutes in a frantic, desperate scramble. He wasn't a warrior. He was a survivor, a scavenger. He saw a pair of 2-pointers lumbering down a main street. Instead of engaging, he climbed a fire escape, his END-42 making the climb taxing but possible. He dislodged a loose piece of concrete from a building's facade. It took all of his strength, but he managed to push it over the edge. It crashed down onto one of the bots, crushing its head unit. Target disabled. 2 villain points. The other bot looked up, its sensors scanning for the threat. Izuku was already moving, scurrying across the rooftop. He was racking up points, but it was slow, exhausting work. He lured a 1-pointer into a narrow alley and tripped it, causing it to crash into a wall. He found a 3-pointer distracted by another examinee and managed to pry open a maintenance panel on its back with a crowbar he'd found, tearing out a handful of wires. Target disabled. 3 villain points. He was a gremlin in the machine, a saboteur, not a hero. But the points were adding up. 1, 3, 6, 11, 14. He checked his internal clock. 6 minutes had passed. He had 28 points. It was a respectable score, probably enough to pass on its own. But the objective was 60. He needed more. He needed rescue points. But there was no one to rescue, and then the world began to shake. A low, deep rumble vibrated up through the soles of his shoes. It wasn't an explosion. It was seismic. Down the main thoroughfare, buildings began to tremble. A shadow fell over the entire street, vast and absolute. With a sound of groaning, protesting metal that defied description, the 0-pointer rose from behind a skyscraper. It was impossibly, biblically huge. Taller than any building in the mock city. Its single, glowing red eye scanned the battlefield, a harbinger of indiscriminate destruction. Its massive arms, ending in wrecking ball fists, swept down and smashed a building into dust and rebar. Izuku's system was screaming at him. Avoid. 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 The other examinees had the same idea. A wave of pure terror washed through the street as everyone, without exception, turned and fled. It was a stampede. This is insane! Why would they put that in here? Run! Just run! Izuku ran with them, his heart pounding in his ears. This was the natural disaster. The unwinnable boss fight. He had to get away. Then he heard it. A small, desperate cry, nearly lost in the chaos. Ow! I'm stuck! Izuku's head snapped around. His eyes scanned the source of the voice. There, about 50 yards from the rampaging 0-pointer, was the girl with the brown bob cut. The nice girl he'd seen at the gate. A piece of heavy rubble, dislodged by the robot's emergence, had pinned her leg. She was trying to push it off, but it was too heavy. The 0-pointer took another step. The ground buckled. Its massive form blotted out the sun. It was getting closer. It wasn't targeting her, but its path would take it right over her. The world went red. Urgent mission issued. Damsel in distress. Description: a fellow examinee is trapped and in mortal danger. The crowd flees. The heroes are absent. What will you do? Objective: save the girl. Bonus objective: defeat the 0-pointer. Rewards: relationship points with Ochako Uraraka 100. Failure penalty: permanent coward debuff. Loss of all accumulated exam points. The penalty was a gut punch. A coward debuff? Losing all his points? His quirk was holding a gun to his head. But even without the threat, he knew what he had to do. All Might's voice echoed in his memory. My body moved on its own! He stopped running. He turned around, facing the mechanical god and the trapped girl. The other fleeing students barely registered his change in direction. His mind went into hyperdrive. The bonus objective, defeat the 0-pointer, was insane. His system had already told him the armor was catastrophic. Punching it was suicide. A 100% smash might work, but it would turn his entire body into a bag of broken glass. He'd save her and fail the exam in the process, not to mention possibly die. There had to be another way. He pushed his analysis skill to its absolute maximum, pouring mental energy into it. He ignored the health and armor values. He looked for something else. Structural integrity. Balance points. Stress load indicators. The system overlaid the robot with a wireframe of complex physics calculations. And he saw it. It wasn't a weak spot. It was a weak concept. The robot was top-heavy. Its bipedal design, while intimidating, was a massive structural flaw. Its entire weight was balanced on two massive, complex leg assemblies, filled with load-bearing hydraulics and actuators. One of those assemblies, in its left hip, glowed a faint yellow in his analytical vision. It was a critical stress point. If that joint failed, the entire structure would fail. He had a target. Now he needed a weapon. He looked down at his own trembling body. He had one for all. He had a slider bar that went from 0.1% to 100%. He couldn't use 100%. He couldn't even use 10%. But maybe he didn't need to. He didn't need to obliterate it. He just needed to break that one specific joint. He made a split-second, desperate calculation. He needed enough power for a single, overwhelming concussive blast. More than a nudge, less than an apocalypse. 5%. It was an arbitrary number, pulled from the desperate air. It felt like a survivable risk. A terrible, horrible, but possibly survivable risk. He looked at the girl, Uraraka, his system supplied. He looked at the descending foot of the robot. He had one shot. He crouched low, his mind focusing on the OFA percentage control slider. He pushed it. He didn't slide it. He slammed it from 0.1% to 5%. Warning: dangerous output surge detected. Limb integrity compromised. Exceeding safe output by 400%. The world exploded in green lightning and agonizing pain. It felt like every bone in his body was being vibrated to the point of shattering. His muscles screamed as they were flooded with a power they were never meant to contain. The 0.1% was a trickle. This was a fire hose. Green bioelectricity, raw and untamed, crackled across his entire body, centering on his right leg. He didn't hesitate. He launched himself into the air. It wasn't a jump. It was an explosion. The ground where he'd been standing cratered. He was a green missile, a blur of motion arcing through the air with terrifying velocity. He wasn't aiming for the head. He was aiming for the hip. He twisted his body in midair, bringing his right leg around in a powerful, desperate kick. It wasn't a move from a martial arts movie. It was a clumsy, full-body swing, putting every ounce of his being and every erg of that 5% into one single point of impact. Time seemed to slow as his foot, wreathed in green energy, connected with the yellow stress point his analysis had highlighted. The impact was not a clean smash. It was a discordant, grinding cataclysm of sound. the sound of a mountain breaking. The thick armor plating of the robot buckled, warped, and then tore open like wet paper. The complex hydraulic joint beneath it shattered into 1,000 pieces. The zero-pointer didn't explode. It died. Its leg went out from under it. With a groan of a dying leviathan, the colossal machine lost its balance. It stumbled, its one good leg unable to support the immense weight. It crashed sideways, its massive torso slamming into a neighboring skyscraper, which buckled and collapsed under the force. The robot was down. Crippled. Defeated. Bonus objective, defeat the zero-pointer. Complete. Izuku felt a fleeting moment of triumph before gravity reasserted its dominance. He had put all his energy into the kick. He had none left for the landing. He plummeted towards the ground, his body a ragdoll. The 5% of one for all, having nowhere else to go, surged back up his leg. He hit the pavement, and the force of the landing combined with the power recoil was too much. Crack. The sound was sickeningly loud, a wet snap that echoed in the sudden silence. Agony, absolute and blinding, erupted from his right leg. He screamed, a raw, animal sound of pure pain. He lay on the broken asphalt, cradling his leg. It was bent at an angle that was horribly, fundamentally wrong. His vision swam. Debuff acquired, broken leg, compound fracture, status, agony, HP, 25/110. The world began to fade into a gray haze. He could hear shouting. The girl, Uraraka, was scrambling out from under the rubble, her face pale with shock and concern. She rushed to his side, her hands hovering uselessly over his broken limb. "Oh my God! Are you okay? That was incredible," she stammered, and then, a voice from the heavens. "Time's you up!" The exam was over. The silence that followed was deafening. Every student who had been fleeing had stopped to watch the spectacle. They stared, mouths agape, at the down zero-pointer, and at the small, broken boy who had done the impossible. Then, a tiny, elderly woman with a large syringe for a cane and her hair in a tight bun hobbled onto the scene. "Recovery girl. My," she said, her voice surprisingly strong as she surveyed the scene. She made her way to Izuku, her eyes sharp and analytical. "Aren't you a reckless one?" She leaned down and gave his forehead a soft, wet kiss. A strange, draining sensation washed over him. He felt his energy, his very life force, being pulled away, but the white-hot agony in his leg began to recede. He felt a bizarre tingling as his bones ground and shifted, knitting themselves back together under his skin. It was an unnerving, deeply unpleasant feeling, but it was better than the pain. "There now," Recovery Girl said, patting his cheek. "That's a lot of stamina for one heal. You'll be very sleepy. Now, about this injury." She looked at his now healed but trembling leg. "It's interesting. I've seen dozens of kids with power enhancer quirks come through here after their first big showing. Usually, their limbs are practically liquefied. A catastrophic explosion of bone and tissue. Yours was a clean, compound fracture. Severe, but localized. It's as if you knew how to channel the energy, even if your body couldn't handle the recoil. That shows incredible potential, and a level of recklessness that gives me a headache." Her words were a balm on his frantic soul. Incredible potential. He had done it. As other medics arrived with a stretcher, the final mission screen popped up, displaying his score. Exam mission, passed the practical, complete. Final score calculation, villain points, 28, rescue points, 60, saving a fellow examinee from a grade 4 threat, 45 points, disabling a grade 4 threat to prevent collateral damage and further risk to examinees, 15 points, total score, 88 points, rank first. Izuku's vision swam again, this time not from pain, but from sheer, overwhelming shock. 88 points. First place. He hadn't just passed. He had dominated, not with overwhelming power, but with strategy, sacrifice, and the help of his own secret, impossible quirk. He looked over at Uraraka, who was talking to the medics, glancing at him with an expression of pure awe. Relationship points with Ochako Uraraka 100 had become relationship level with Ochako Uraraka, acquaintance, positive. As they loaded him onto the stretcher, he let his head fall back. He was exhausted, drained, and his legs still throbbed with a phantom ache. But beneath it all, A deep, unshakable sense of victory was taking root. He had faced his first real trial as a wielder of One for All and hadn't just survived. He had won. On his own terms. The path to becoming a hero was no longer a dream. It was a progress bar, and he had just taken his first giant leap forward. The week between the entrance exam and the first day of school was the longest of Izuku Midoriya's life. It was a strange, liminal space between the impossible dream and the terrifying reality. He had done it. He was in. The official acceptance letter from UA, delivered by a stoic Altheme postman, had made it real. The moment the small projector disc inside had activated, casting a holographic image of a beaming All Might into his bedroom, had been the single most validating experience he could have imagined. "I am here! As a projection!" All Might had boomed, causing Izuku's mother to shriek with a mixture of shock and delight. He had congratulated Izuku on his astonishing score, praised his heroic spirit, and officially welcomed him to UA High. Watching his mother weep with unrestrained joy, her hands clasped over her mouth as she looked from the hologram to her son, was a reward far greater than any amount of EXP the system could offer. For the first time, her tears for him were not born of pity or worry, but of overwhelming pride. But beneath the elation, a current of deep-seated anxiety ran strong. He had won the battle, but the war for control had only just begun. One for All was a slumbering god in his bones, and he, a novice priest, had only just learned the first verse of the prayer to keep it from waking and destroying the temple. He spent the week not resting, but grinding. In the real world, he did light exercises, careful not to strain his newly healed leg, and devoured his school textbooks. In the silent, private world of his quirk, he navigated the complex menus of his hero's journey system. He had leveled up to 27 after the exam, granting him another 10 stat points. He invested them cautiously, splitting them between agility and wisdom, deciding that speed and better decision-making were his next priorities. More importantly, he discovered a new facet of the system. He could spend his accumulated EXP not just on leveling up, but on directly improving certain non-combat skills. He poured a few hundred points into basic academics, raising it from novice to competent, hoping to keep up with what was sure to be a demanding curriculum. He also leveled up his analysis skill to LVL2, the system promising a faster processing speed and the ability to glean more subtle information. This led to a new skill branching off from it, Observer. Observer, LVL1, type passive. Description: your senses are passively heightened. You are more likely to notice small details, subtle shifts in body language, and environmental changes that others might miss. Increases perception and aids in information gathering. He was sharpening his mind, his greatest natural asset, turning his nervous, overanalytical tendencies into a quantifiable, trainable weapon. He was no longer just a fanba who wrote in notebooks. He was an analyst honing his craft. When the first day of school finally dawned, Izuku stood before his mirror, clad in the crisp, gray UE uniform. The red tie felt like a yoke of immense responsibility. He looked different. The 10 months of hellish training had stripped away his baby fat, replacing it with a lean, wiry frame. His face was sharper, his eyes clearer. He still looked like Izuku Midoriya, but it was a version of himself that had been fired in a kiln, harder and more defined. He took a deep breath, and with a familiar mental command, activated full cowl at its base 0.1% setting. The faint, internal hum was a comforting presence now, a reminder of the power he held in check. His vessel stability meter read a healthy 98%. He was ready. The walk to UA was different. The gates that had once seemed like an impassable barrier now felt like a welcoming threshold. He was no longer an outsider looking in. He belonged here. Finding Class 1A was its own small adventure. The door was colossal, easily 3 times the height of a normal person, designed to accommodate students with any kind of size-altering or gigantification quirk. It was a clear, unsubtle message. This place was for the extraordinary. Taking another deep breath, he slid the massive door open. Do not put your feet on the desk. Such an action is an insult to the upperclassmen who sat here and the master craftsmen who built it. The first thing Izuku saw was Tenya Ida, the righteous boy from the exam orientation, chopping his arms stiffly at a figure lounging with his feet propped up on a desk. The figure, of course, was Katsuki Bakugo. Like I care. Bakugo sneered, not even bothering to look at Ida. What junior high you from, you four-eyed extra? Izuku's observer skill immediately picked up on the subtle details. The perfect, razor-sharp crease in Ida's trousers. The almost imperceptible tremor of rage in Bakugo's propped-up foot. The way the other students in the room were pretending not to watch, their bodies angled away but their eyes stealing glances. Before he could process it all, Ida's head swiveled towards him. You, he declared, marching over with the gait of a drill sergeant. Good morning. I am Tenya Ida, from Somei Private Academy. I know. Izuku squeaked, intimidated by the sudden, intense focus. I'm Midoriya. Izuku Midoriya. It's nice to meet you, Ida-kun, Midoriya-kun, Ida said, his expression turning serious. I must admit, I misjudged you during the orientation. You perceived the true nature of the practical exam, did you not? While I saw only the villain points, you understood the hidden element, the rescue component. I was blinded. As a result, you surpassed me. I hate to admit it, but you are the superior student. Izuku was floored. This intense, seemingly arrogant boy was humbling himself, admitting fault where Izuku hadn't even perceived a slight. Relationship level with Tenya Ida, acquaintance, neutral, acquaintance, respectful, 20 relationship points. Oh. Hey. It's you! A cheerful voice cut through the tension. The brown-haired girl from the exam, her cheeks perpetually rosy, bounced over to them. The boy with the amazing punch! Or I guess it was a kick, wasn't it? That was incredible. You completely demolished that giant robot. Izuku's face erupted in a blush so intense it could have been a heat-based quirk. His CHR-4 stat was screaming at him to flee. Thank you. I mean, it was nothing, really, just, and then you looked so worried about your leg. She continued, oblivious to his meltdown. My name's Ochako Uraraka. It's nice to meet you, Midoriya-kun, Ida-kun. Her friendliness was a disarming, powerful force. Relationship level with Ochako Uraraka, acquaintance, positive, friend budding. Izuku's system seemed to approve. If you're here to make friends, then you can pack up and leave. A new voice, low and profoundly tired, came from the floor. The trio turned to see what looked like a giant, yellow caterpillar lying by the door. It was a man in a rumpled sleeping bag. Warning, high-level individual detected. The system's alert was sharp and insistent. The man slowly unzipped the bag and rose to his feet. He was tall and scruffy, with tired, bloodshot eyes and a scarf that looked like it was made of woven bandages. He took a long sip from a juice pouch. Shota Aizawa, Eraserhead, LVL 81. Title, The Underground Hero. Status, tired? Just so tired. Threat level, extreme. Do not engage. Izuku's blood ran cold. Eraserhead. An underground hero famous for taking on entire villain groups single-handedly, his quirk shrouded in mystery. This was their homeroom teacher? It took you 8 seconds to quiet down, Aizawa said, his voice a monotone drone. That's irrational. Life is short, and you kids don't have time to waste. He pulled a blue gym uniform out of his sleeping bag. I'm your homeroom teacher, Shota Aizawa. Put these on and meet me on the P grounds. Now. He turned and shuffled out, leaving a stunned and silent Class 1A in his wake. The P grounds were bathed in the morning sun. The 20 students of Class 1A stood in a nervous line, clad in their identical blue uniforms. A quirk apprehension test? The class exclaimed in unison. But what about the entrance ceremony? Or orientation? Uraraka asked, her brow furrowed in confusion. If you want to be heroes, you don't have time for frilly, pointless ceremonies, Aizawa stated flatly. UA is famous for its freestyle educational system. That applies to us teachers as well. He turned his gaze on the class, and for the first time, there was a sharp, dangerous glint in his tired eyes. You've been doing these since junior high, right? Standardized fitness tests where you weren't allowed to use your quirks. It's irrational. The country still pretends we're all created equal by holding back those with power. It's a joke. He tossed a softball to Bakugo. Bakugo. You finished first in the practical exam for the general intake. What was your best softball throw in junior high? 67 meters. Bakugo grunted. Try it with your quirk, Aizawa instructed. Bakugo strode into the throwing circle, a vicious grin spreading across his face. He stretched his arm, winding up. Die! He screamed, launching the ball with a massive, controlled explosion that sent a shockwave and a cloud of smoke washing over the class. The ball soared, a tiny speck against the blue sky. A few moments later, Aizawa's phone beeped. He held it up. The screen read, 705.2 m. The class erupted in excited murmurs. 705 meters? Seriously? This looks like fun! We can use our quirks as much as we want. Sweet! Fun? Aizawa's voice was suddenly cold as ice. The playful atmosphere evaporated instantly. You have 3 years here to become a hero. You think it's all going to be fun? His lips pulled back into a grim, unsettling smile. How about this? The student who ranks last in these 8 tests will be judged to have no potential, and will be expelled immediately. Panic. Pure, unadulterated panic swept through the class. Izuku's heart hammered against his ribs. Expelled? On the first day? This had to be a lie. A rational falsehood, designed to push them. But the look in Aizawa's eyes was deadly serious. As the class reeled, Izuku's system lit up, calm and logical amidst the chaos. Pop-up quest, quirk apprehension test. Description: your new homeroom teacher is a practitioner of rational deception and harsh trials. Survive his test and prove you have the potential he seeks. Main objective: avoid expulsion, finish 19th or higher. Bonus objectives: place in the top 10. Beat Katsuki Bakugo's overall score. Impress Shota Aizawa. Rewards 1000 EXP. New title? Failure. Expulsion from UA Hero Course. The quest log solidified the threat. It was real. His dream could end right here, in this dusty field. Welcome, Aizawa said, his eyes scanning each of their terrified faces. This is the hero course at UA High. The first test, a 50-meter dash. Izuku was paired against Ida. He took his place at the starting line, his mind racing. This was his chance to show controlled output. He focused on the OFA percentage control slider. He couldn't afford another broken bone. He needed speed, but manageable speed. He pushed the slider to 3%. Full call output set to 3%. Warning: minor muscle strain detected. Vessel stability drain increased. A surge of power, far greater than his 0.1% baseline, flooded him. A visible tracery of green lightning crackled around his body. The starting pistol fired. Ida's quirk engine flared to life, blue flames erupting from his calves. He was a bullet. But Izuku was right there with him. He pushed off, the 3% output giving him an explosive burst of speed that shocked even himself. The ground flew by in a blur. Ida crossed the line in 3.04 seconds. Izuku was just a fraction of a second behind him, at 4.13 seconds. He skidded to a halt, his legs tingling with the strain. He'd been fast. Incredibly fast for someone who was previously below average. He looked up and saw the expressions of his classmates. Confusion. And from Bakugo, a narrowed, suspicious glare. It wasn't the explosive anger he was used to. It was colder. More analytical. Test 1 complete. Score above average. Skill use, full cal, 3%. 10 skill EXP. The second test, the grip test. A simple device to measure grip strength. Izuku watched as a muscular, multi-armed student named Shoji Mizo recorded a staggering 540 kilograms. How could he compete with that? Smashing the device with OFA was out of the question. He needed finesse. An idea sparked. It was something he theorized about during his week of study. He didn't have to let the power flow out. He could use it to reinforce in. He took the device. He focused not on full cal, but on a tiny, localized trickle of one for all, directing it into the muscles and bones of his hand. He wasn't trying to project force. He was trying to increase his own structural density. The system labeled this nascent technique OFA reinforcement. He squeezed. The device's digital readout climbed rapidly. 40 kg. 80 kg. 120 kg. He pushed harder, the muscles in his forearm bulging, a faint green glow visible under his skin. It topped out at 156 kilograms before the strain became too much. It wasn't a record-breaking score, but it was far, far beyond what he should have been capable of. He released the device, his hand trembling. He hadn't broken anything. He'd shown a completely different application of his power. He risked a glance at Bakugo. The blonde's scowl had deepened. He had seen the green glow. He had seen Izuku use his super strength quirk in two completely different ways in as many minutes. The gears were turning in his rival's head, and Izuku knew it. The test continued. In the standing long jump, a 2% full cowl burst allowed him to clear the entire sandbox with ease. In the repeated sidesteps, the same low-level output gave him an unnatural agility, letting him rack up a high score. He was careful, calculating. He treated his body like a resource, spending his stamina and risking minor muscle strain for points, always keeping an eye on the vessel's stability meter. He was not just performing, he was managing a complex system under extreme pressure. And then came the final, most dreaded test, the ball throw. He watched his classmates go one by one. Uraraka, using her zero-gravity quirk, touched the ball and threw it. It floated away, never to return. Aizawa's device beeped, infinity. The creativity impressed him. This was what it meant to be a hero, to think outside the box. Then it was Bakugo's turn. He stepped into the circle, the 705.2-meter score looming over everyone. He repeated his performance, the same explosive throw, the same confident smirk. The benchmark was set. Finally, it was Izuku's turn. He walked into the circle, the soft ball feeling heavy in his hand. He could feel every eye on him. This was the event where he'd broken himself in the exam. This was the moment of truth. He took a deep breath, preparing to channel his power. He could do this. He had a plan. He wouldn't use 100%. He wouldn't even use 5%. He would, wait, Aizawa's voice cut through the air. Izuku looked up, and his heart stopped. The teacher's eyes were glowing a hellish red, his black hair floating around his head as if underwater. His scarf, the woven bandages, had unfurled and was writhing like angry snakes. Izuku tried to summon full cowl. Nothing. The connection to One for All was gone. It was like a door in his mind had been slammed shut and locked. Warning, external quirk interference detected. Quirk, erasure. One for All has been temporarily nullified. I was watching you during the exam, Aizawa said, his voice dangerously low as he used his capture weapon to yank Izuku towards him, closing the distance in an instant. You have a powerful quirk, one that granted you a ridiculous score. But in the process you crippled yourself. He was inches from Izuku's face, his red eyes boring into him. You can't keep relying on others to patch you up after you break yourself like a useless toy. Are you planning to be a one-trick pony? To fire off one massive blast, and then be a liability on the battlefield? Because if so, you have zero potential as a hero. The words were a physical blow. Aizawa wasn't just critiquing him. He was dissecting his greatest fear and holding it up for him to see. Aizawa blinked. The red glow in his eyes faded, and his hair fell back around his shoulders. Izuku felt the connection to One for All rush back, a comforting warmth returning to his limbs. Quirk, erasure has been deactivated. One for All is accessible. I've returned your quirk, Aizawa said, his tone flat once more. You have one more chance to throw. Show me you're not useless. Exceed my expectations. He stepped back, leaving Izuku alone in the circle, his heart hammering, his mind a maelstrom. This was it. This was the real test. Aizawa wasn't testing his power. He was testing his intelligence. His control. He couldn't fail. He had to prove him wrong. He had to impress him. He had to complete the bonus objective. System, he thought, his desperation forging a clear channel of intent. Ball throw. Target distance, 705.2 meters. Condition, minimal bodily harm. Calculate optimal output and application. His quirk, his hero's journey, responded instantly. His field of vision became a stream of complex data. Wind speed, air density, the mass of the ball, his own current stats. It all flowed into a complex physics engine. A simulation played out in his mind's eye, a 5% arm smash resulting in a shattered radius and ulna. A 10% full body throw resulting in massive internal tearing. Failure. 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 Then, a new variable was introduced, born from his own burgeoning skill. Skill, one for all, localized output, LVL1, running simulations based on pinpoint energy release. Optimal solution found. A new screen appeared clear and precise. Recommended action, channel 1 for all at 8% output. Target, distal phalanx of the right index finger. Application point, final moment of release, transfer kinetic energy from arm motion into OFA-powered flick. Predicted result, 705.3 meters. Predicted damage, compound fracture of the targeted finger bone. Surrounding tissue damage, minimal. Arm integrity, 99%. It was perfect. A solution born of data and desperation. It was a terrible, painful plan, but it was a plan. It met all the criteria. He took his position again. He could feel Bakugo's glare burning into his back. He could feel Aizawa's piercing, expectant gaze. He started his wind-up, a standard baseball pitch. He focused his entire will, his entire consciousness, on the tip of his right index finger. He didn't let the power of one for all flood his arm. He channeled it, guiding it like a surgeon, down his shoulder, past his elbow, through his wrist, and into that one, single, tiny point. The 8% felt like concentrating a star into a pinhead. The tip of his finger began to glow with a blinding green light, the energy contained and compressed. As his arm came forward, he snapped his wrist. At the exact moment the ball was meant to leave his hand, he unleashed the power. It wasn't an explosion. It was a release. A focused, directional blast of pure force. Crack boom. The sound was twofold. The first was the ball breaking the sound barrier, leaving a visible vapor cone in its wake. The second, a sickeningly sharp snap, was the sound of his own finger bone shattering under the impossible pressure. Pain, white-hot and brilliant, shot up his arm. He bit back a scream, clutching his hand to his chest. His finger was bent at a horrifyingly unnatural angle, a shard of bone threatening to pierce the skin. Debuff, broken finger, compound fracture. But his arm was fine. His shoulder was fine. He hadn't destroyed himself. He looked up, panting, sweat beading on his forehead. The ball was gone, a faint streak against the sky. All eyes were on him. The class was silent, stunned. Aizawa looked down at his phone. He held it up for Izuku to see. 7:05.3 m. A murmur rippled through the class. He had done it. He had beaten Bakugo by a mere 10 centimeters. But Izuku wasn't looking at the score. He was looking at Aizawa. And for the briefest, most fleeting of moments, he saw the corner of his teacher's mouth twitch upwards into a tiny, almost imperceptible smile. It was a smile of surprise, of approval. It was a smile that said, "You passed. Bonus objective complete," impressed Shota Aizawa. A wave of relief so profound it almost made him buckle washed over him. And then, the final, beautiful notification. Through controlled, high-stress application of a new technique, your understanding has deepened. Skill level up. One for all, localized output is now LVL2. When the final results were posted, Izuku stood in 4th place, just behind Momo Yayorozu, Shoto Todoroki, and Katsuki Bakugo. He had failed the bonus objective of beating Bakugo's overall score. The blonde's raw physical talent had placed him higher in the other tests. But he had achieved everything else. He was safe. He had proven himself. By the way, Aizawa said, his back to the class as he started to walk away. The expulsion was a rational falsehood. The class stood in stunned silence, before erupting into a collective sigh of relief. It was obvious it was a lie, if you just thought about it, said a sharp voice. Momo Yayorozu, a tall girl with a confident aura, stood with her arms crossed. Izuku's analysis pegged her as LVL 16, title, the Everything Hero, with an INT stat that rivaled his own. As the day ended and the students began to file out, Izuku felt a sense of weary triumph. He'd survived. He had made a good impression. He had even made a couple of friends in Ida and Uraraka. It was a perfect first day, until it wasn't. DKU. The voice was low, guttural, and full of a cold fury that was more terrifying than his usual explosive rage. Izuku froze at the school gate. Bakugo stood there, blocking his path, his red eyes narrowed to slits. The other students gave them a wide berth. Kaken! Izuku stammered, his old instincts kicking in. Don't you kaken me! Bakugo snarled, taking a step closer. Smoke was beginning to curl from his palms. I've been watching you all day. All through the exam. You've been hiding something. All this time. That's not a quirk. What are you talking about? Of course it is. No. Bakugo insisted, his voice dropping to a near whisper. It's not. Quirks have rules. They have limits. They have a theme. My quirk makes explosions. That ice-hot bastard's quirk makes fire and ice. Yours, what the hell does yours do? He began to tick off points on his fingers, his voice rising with each one. At the exam, it was a super-powered kick that broke your leg. Today, it was a speed boost that covered you in lightning. Then it was some kind of strength reinforcement in your hand with a different glow. And then, you channeled all that power into the tip of your goddamn finger to throw a ball. That's not one quirk. That's 3 or 4 different quirks. Izuku's blood ran cold. He hadn't realized how it looked from the outside. Bakugo, a prodigy who had lived and breathed quirks his whole life, saw the inconsistencies. He saw the pattern that wasn't a pattern. It's too versatile. Bakugo growled, his face inches from Izuku's. The way you use it, it's too controlled. Too systematic. Like you're reading a manual. You've been lying to me. You've been lying to everyone your entire life, pretending to be some useless, quirkless nobody. What is that power, you damn nerd? Tell me. Izuku was speechless. He was completely, utterly cornered. He couldn't tell him about One for All. He couldn't possibly explain the hero's journey. Any lie he could come up with would be shredded by Bakugo's furious, analytical gaze. He stood there, mute, 1,000 useless excuses dying on his tongue. As the silence stretched, thick with unspoken history and brand new rage, a final, ominous notification appeared in Izuku's vision, its border a stark, blood-red. Rivalry event triggered. Rival, Katsuki Bakugo has upgraded your status from pebble to primary obstacle. His obsession with understanding your power has now become a core motivation. New long-term questline unlocked. The unquenchable fire of a rival. Izuku stared past Bakugo's furious face at the glowing red text, a profound sense of dread washing over him. The games, it seemed, were only just beginning. The air in Class 1A the next morning was electric. The quirk apprehension test had been a brutal introduction, a crucible that had forged their disparate group of talented teenagers into something resembling a cohesive, if wary, unit. They had all seen a glimpse of each other's power, and more importantly, each other's potential. For Izuku, the memory of the previous day was a cocktail of weary triumph and simmering dread. He had proven himself, but in doing so, he had painted an enormous target on his back, one visible only to the furious, analytical eyes of Katsuki Bakugo. The rivalry event notification was a permanent fixture in his quest log now, a constant, low-level alert that hummed with a promise of future conflict. He had spent the night not celebrating, but studying, poring over the system's analysis of his classmates' quirks, trying to turn his anxiety into preparation. I am, a voice like a thunderclap ripped through the classroom's morning chatter. Coming through the door like a normal person. All Might burst into the room, his body clad not in his modern costume, but in the vibrant red, white, and blue of his Silver Age design. The effect was dazzling. He was a living piece of history, a comic book panel brought to life, his signature smile so bright it seemed to generate its own light. The class erupted. It's All Might! Whoa, he's really teaching us. Is that his Silver Age costume? So retro! Izuku felt his inner fanboy, a part of him that would never truly die, overtake him. His analysis skill flared, unbidden, layering data over the nostalgic image. All Might teaching mode, LDL, status, exerting himself, radiating charisma. Note, costume choice is a deliberate psychological tool to inspire and evoke a classic era of heroism. It's working. Welcome to the most important class at UA High. Hero Basic Training. All Might boomed, striking a dramatic pose. Here, you will learn the foundational skills of what it means to be a hero. We'll be diving right in with a lesson on combat. He gestured to the wall, where numbered cases began to slide out, revealing sleek metal briefcases. And to go with your first foray into battle, we had these made for you based on your quirk registration forms and design requests. Your battle costumes. Another wave of pure, unadulterated excitement swept the room. Izuku's heart leaped into his throat. His costume, the design he had doodled in his notebooks for years, the one his mother had helped him sew, now professionally realized. They changed quickly and met at Ground Beta, a sprawling urban cityscape bathed in sunlight. As his classmates emerged one by one, Izuku felt a swell of awe. Each costume was a unique expression of their identity and power. Ida looked like a sleek, armored knight. Uraraka's suit was puffy and practical, designed to mitigate the side effects of her quirk. Then there was Bakugo. His costume was aggressively militaristic, with grenade-shaped gauntlets on his arms and a black and orange color scheme that screamed danger. He looked like a living weapon. Izuku looked down at his own costume. It was a simple, teal-green jumpsuit, with a white belt, black boots, and elbow and knee pads. The most distinct feature was the full-face mask, with long, ear-like protrusions and a respirator-like mouthpiece fixed in a rictus grin, an homage to his idol. It felt a little dorky. It felt like him. "You look so cool, Deku-kun," Uraraka said, giving him a thumbs up. Her own helmet made her look like a friendly astronaut. "So practical, Deku?" Izuku yelped. "Yeah. During the fitness test, that guy Bakugo was calling you that, right?" she explained. "It sounds kind of like the Japanese word for you can do it, Dikairu. So I kinda liked it." Title Deku has been redefined by user Ochako Uraraka. Old meaning useless, new meaning you can do it. Accept new definition? Y/N. Izuku's face flushed. The name that had been a brand of shame his entire life was being offered back to him as a badge of honor. He thought for a moment, the system's prompt blinking patiently. "Yes, my name is Deku now," he declared, with more confidence than he felt. "Now then, let's get this trial started," All Might announced, gathering their attention. "This will be an indoor, 2-on-2 battle. One team will be the villains, tasked with guarding a mock nuclear weapon. The other team, the heroes, must either capture the villains with this capture tape, or secure the weapon within the time limit. It's a test of strategy, teamwork, and combat prowess." He held up a box. "Your teams and opponents will be decided by drawing lots." One by one they drew. Izuku's hand trembled as he reached into the box. He pulled out a small ball. "Team A." He looked around frantically. Uraraka held up her own ball, also marked with an A. A wave of relief washed over him. He had a partner he could work with. Then All Might drew the opposing team. "And your opponents will be Team D." Izuku's blood ran cold. He saw Ida hold up a D ball, his expression serious. And beside him, a cruel, triumphant smirk spreading across his face, Bakugo held up the other one. It was fate. It was a nightmare. Bakugo's crimson eyes locked onto his, and the smirk widened into a predatory grin. It was a look that promised pain. All Might laid out the scenario. "Team D will be the villains. They will have 5 minutes to prepare inside the building. Team A, the heroes, will wait outside and then begin your infiltration. All other students will proceed to the monitor room to observe." As Bakugo and Ida entered the building, Izuku's mind was a frantic storm of panic. This was the worst-case scenario. Facing Kaken, who now viewed him as a liar and a primary obstacle in a sanctioned fight. But then the cool, logical presence of his quirk asserted itself, cutting through the fear. A crisp, blue window materialized. Team mission, heroes versus villains. Description: face your rival in your first official combat trial. He seeks to dominate you through raw power. You must overcome him with intellect and teamwork. This is not just a test of strength, but a philosophy. Main objective: secure the weapon or capture both opponents within 15 minutes. Rewards: 2000 EXP, 5 skill points, 50 relationship points with Ochako Uraraka. Title: Rookie Strategist. Bonus Objective 1. Win without breaking any bones. Reward: 1000 EXP, 1 to wisdom, WIS. Bonus objective 2, formulate and successfully execute a winning strategy with your partner. Reward 500 EXP, 1 to charisma, CHR. Failure, humiliation in front of your peers. Significant loss of relationship points with Katsuki Bakugo, rivalry intensifies. The objectives were stark and clear. The system wasn't asking him to win by brawling. It was demanding he win intelligently. The first bonus objective was a direct challenge. Prove you have the control Aizawa demanded of you. The second was a test of the very thing All Might had chosen him for, his mind. Deku-kun? Are you okay? You're muttering again. Uraraka said, her voice grounding him. I'm fine, he squeaked, shaking his head to clear it. I'm better than fine. I have a plan. He pulled out the floor plan of the building that All Might had provided. Okay, look. Kaken. Bakugo. He's almost certainly going to come straight for me. He's impulsive, and he's angry. He'll ignore the mission objective to try and fight me. That's our opening. He turned to her, his eyes sharp with analytical focus. Uraraka-san, I need to know the limits of your quirk. Exactly, my quirk? It's zero gravity. I can make anything I touch with the pads on my fingertips weightless. The weight limit is about 3 tons. If I try to lift more, or if I use it on myself too much, I get super nauseous. She pointed to her suit. These pressure points on my wrists and neck are supposed to help with that. Izuku's analysis skill was already running, cross-referencing her words with its own data. Quirk, zero gravity. User Ochako Uraraka. Analysis, tactile activation. Max load approximate 3.1 metric tons. Overuse or self-application leads to vestibular disruption, nausea, vertigo. Release is performed by touching fingertips together. A highly versatile quirk for mobility, support, and environmental control. Okay, good, that's perfect, Izuku said, his voice dropping into a low, rapid murmur as he processed. The building has 5 floors. The weapon could be on any of them. Bakugo will engage me on a lower floor. That leaves Ida alone, guarding the weapon. He's fast, but his quirk is best in straight lines. The building is full of blind corners and obstacles. He'll be on high alert. So, here's the plan. He looked her directly in the eye, his usual timidness replaced by the focused intensity of a field commander. I'll be the bait. I will engage Bakugo and, more importantly, stall him. I won't try to beat him, I'll just keep him busy. While I'm doing that, you will use your quirk to move stealthily through the building, find Ida and the weapon, and wait for my signal. Your job is the objective. My job is the distraction. He handed her a small earpiece from his utility belt. This is a standard comm unit. I'll feed you tactical information. Don't engage Ida until I give the signal. Can you do that? Uraraka stared at him, her round eyes wide. This wasn't the stuttering, nervous boy from before. This was someone else. This was a hero. She nodded firmly, a determined smile on her face. Got it. Leave it to me, Deku-kun. Okay. All Might's voice crackled in their earpieces. Hero team, your infiltration begins, now! Izuku and Uraraka slipped through a ground floor window. The inside of the building was a labyrinth of concrete hallways and pillars, eerily silent. Stay frosty, kids! Villains are lurking everywhere! All Might's voice coached. Izuku took a deep breath. Time to go to work. Full call 5%, warning, high-risk output. Sustained use will lead to significant muscle tearing and rapid stamina drain. Vessel stability drain is moderate. The warning flashed, but he accepted it. This was a calculated risk. A web of brilliant green energy, far more intense than he had used in the fitness test, erupted around his body. The power was a roaring inferno compared to the candle flame of his 0.1% baseline. His muscles screamed in protest, a minor muscle strain debuff immediately appearing, but he grit his teeth. He needed the speed. He needed the agility. He gave Uraraka a nod. She touched her boots, making herself weightless, and silently floated towards the nearest stairwell. The plan was in motion. Izuku moved cautiously down the main corridor. His observer skill was on high alert, his eyes scanning every shadow, his ears straining for the slightest sound. He knew it wouldn't be long. Bakugo wasn't one for subtlety. The attack came without warning. An explosion ripped through the wall to his left. Bakugo burst from the dust and debris, his face a mask of feral rage, his right hand already swinging in a wide, explosive arc. "I've got you, Deku!" Izuku's 5% output saved him. He reacted an instant before the explosion went off, pushing off the floor and rocketing backwards. The heat of the blast washed over him, singeing the ears of his costume, the air filled with the scent of burnt sugar and ozone. He landed in a crouch 20 feet away, his heart hammering. Bakugo was already launching himself forward again, using smaller, directional blasts to propel himself like a jet fighter. This began the dance. It wasn't a fight. It was a desperate, high-speed ballet of evasion. Izuku didn't throw a single punch. He poured all his focus into movement, his system feeding him a constant stream of data. Attack pattern analyzed, right hook with explosive follow-through. Evasion vector, low left. Predictive analysis. User will attempt a feint followed by a close-range blast. Increased distance. He darted between concrete pillars, slid under wide swings, and used the walls to kick off in unpredictable directions. The 5% full cowl didn't make him stronger than Bakugo, but it made him just fast enough to stay one step ahead of the explosions. He was a flicker of green lightning, always just out of reach. "Stand still and fight me!" Bakugo roared, his frustration mounting with every missed attack. The building echoed with the sound of his explosions and Izuku's frantic footsteps. In the monitor room, the other students were captivated. "Whoa, Midori is holding his own!" Kirishima exclaimed. "He's not holding his own, he's just running away." Someone else muttered. Todoroki watched the screen, his expression unreadable, his gaze fixed on the crackling green energy surrounding Izuku. Izuku, meanwhile, was fighting a battle on two fronts. While dodging for his life, he had his comms channel open. "Uraraka, report." "Where are you?" Her voice came back, quiet and tense. "Third floor." "It's empty." "Moving up." "Good. Keep me posted." He ducked as Bakugo unleashed another blast that shattered a window. He needed to try and end this part of the fight. He unspooled a length of capture tape. "Kaken, this is a class exercise. Let's do this properly." He lunged forward, not to attack, but to try and wrap the tape around Bakugo's leg. It was a foolish, hopeful gesture. "Shut up!" Bakugo screamed, detonating a point-blank explosion from his boot that incinerated the tape and sent Izuku flying backward. He landed hard, the impact jarring his already strained muscles. Debuff acquired, moderate muscle strain back. Bakugo stood over him, panting, his eyes blazing. "You've been looking down on me all this time, haven't you? Acting like a worthless, quirkless pebble, when you had a power like this hiding away. You think you're better than me? That's not it!" Izuku gasped, scrambling to his feet. "You've always been amazing, Kaken! That's why I want to beat you! I want to surpass you at your best." It was the wrong thing to say. Bakugo's face contorted with a rage so profound it was almost silent. "You want to beat me? You! Don't make me laugh." He raised his arm, aiming one of his massive, grenade-like gauntlets. "You know what these are, Deku? Every time I sweat, these gauntlets store up the nitroglycerin." And now, a notification from All Might crackled over the comms, intended for Bakugo. "Young Bakugo, don't! You'll kill him! He won't die if he dodges!" Bakugo screamed, his hand reaching for the pin. While this was happening, Uraraka's voice came through Izuku's earpiece. "Deku-kun, I've found it. 5th floor, center vault. Ida's in there. He's gone full villain mode. He's cleared the room of everything, so there's nothing for me to make float. And he's talking to himself. It's kinda creepy." Izuku's mind raced. The gauntlet. Ida's cleared room. The plan had to change. He couldn't just send Uraraka in. He looked at Bakugo, at the mad glee in his eyes as he prepared to fire. He saw the layout of the building in his mind, the 5 floors stacked on top of each other. A new, insane plan began to form. "Uraraka," he whispered into his comm, his voice urgent. "New plan. Get ready to move on my signal. I'm about to make a very big noise." Bakugo pulled the pin. A colossal, blinding jet of explosive force erupted from the gauntlet. It wasn't a simple blast. It was a concentrated beam of destruction that carved a burning trench through the building. Izuku, anticipating it, had already thrown himself behind a thick concrete pillar. The sheer concussive force still hit him like a physical blow, and the heat was intense enough to make his skin blister. The pillar cracked and groaned under the strain. The entire building shook. In the monitor room, there was chaos. Is this even allowed? Midoriya could be dead. All Might clutched the microphone, his knuckles white. Bakugo, my boy, another stunt like that and I will stop this fight and your team will lose. The smoke cleared. Izuku was still standing, though his suit was blackened and torn. The left side of his mask was cracked. Bakugo was panting, the recoil from the blast clearly taking a toll. So you can take that, huh? Bakugo growled, preparing his other gauntlet. But Izuku wasn't looking at him. He was looking up. He was looking at the ceiling, which was the floor of the second story. He was doing the math. He thinks I have to meet his power with my own. He's expecting a smash, but a smash would break his arm. Bonus Objective 1 failed. It would leave him useless. It was a losing move. Aizawa's words echoed in his head. Show me you're not useless. He had to think differently. He had to redefine the fight. He braced himself, crouching low. He channeled his power, but not into his arms. He focused it all into the soles of his feet. The green lightning intensified, crackling violently. System calculating optimal output for structural failure. Solution found. Localized 8% OFA burst. Vector downward. Target floor. Here it comes, Deku! Bakugo yelled, lunging forward for a follow-up attack. You're big, show-off punch! You're right, Kaken, Izuku said, a strange calm settling over him. It is coming. He didn't punch. He stomped. He unleashed the 8% of one for all directly into the floor beneath him. The result was not a smash. It was an upheaval. The concrete floor didn't just crack. It exploded downwards in a shower of dust and debris. The force of the blast, with nowhere else to go, propelled Izuku upwards like a rocket. He shot through the hole he just made, then through the floor of the third story, then the fourth, the concussive force of his passage blowing out every window on each floor. It was a vertical shockwave, a man-made earthquake. Bakugo, who had been lunging forward, was caught completely off guard. The shockwave hit him full force, throwing him off his feet. He was enveloped in a choking cloud of concrete dust, his ears ringing, completely disoriented. In his earpiece, Izuku screamed one, single, triumphant word. Now! On the fifth floor, Uraraka had been hiding behind the vault door. She heard the thunderous, rising boom and saw the floor tremble violently. Then she heard Izuku's signal. She peeked into the room. Ida, startled by the massive explosion from below, was distracted, looking towards the far side of the room. This was her chance. She burst into the room. I've come for you, villain! Uraraka-kun! Ida gasped, spinning around. So you've come! I anticipated this. With nothing in this room to use your quirk on, you are powerless against my super speed, maybe, Uraraka said, a grin on her face. But my partner made me a path. She ran, not at Ida, but towards the massive concrete pillar in the center of the room. She slapped her hand against it, her quirk activating. Target pillar. Wait, nullified. It's a super move, Ida-kun! She yelled, borrowing Bakugo's terminology. Comet home run! Using the pillar as a bat, she swung it with all her might. An entire concrete pillar, now weightless, swung through the air. The comet she was referring to wasn't the pillar itself. It was the thousands of pieces of shattered concrete and debris from the wrecked floors below, which she had also made weightless as she ran past. The debris, now a swirling cloud of deadly, silent projectiles, followed in the wake of the pillar. Ida's eyes widened in horror. He was fast, but he couldn't dodge hundreds of projectiles coming from every direction at once. He braced himself, but he was instantly overwhelmed, pelted by a storm of floating rubble. While he was staggered and trying to protect his head, Uraraka leaped over the debris field, her body still light from her boots, and threw her arms around the giant papier-mâché bomb. I've got it! She yelled. A deafening buzzer sounded through the entire complex. Silence. Then, All Might's voice, shaking with barely suppressed excitement, echoed from the speakers. Hero. Team. Yins! On the fourth floor, Izuku landed in a heap, his body screaming in protest. The controlled explosion had saved his arms, but his legs were on fire. Debuff acquired, severe muscle strain, legs. Debuff acquired, minor muscle tearing, back and shoulders. HP, 65/120. Vessel stability, 32%. Bonus objective 1. Win without breaking any bones, complete. He had done it. He was exhausted. He was in agony. But he was whole. He looked through the gaping hole in the floor. He could see Bakugo, just now getting to his knees, his face utterly blank. It wasn't anger. It wasn't rage. It was the silent, profound, hollow shock of a person whose entire worldview had just been shattered. He had lost. He hadn't just been beaten. He had been completely and utterly outthought. As the medics arrived, putting Izuku on a stretcher, he saw Uraraka at the edge of the hole on the floor above, giving him a shaky, nauseous-looking thumbs up. He managed a weak one in return. In the monitor room, there was dead silence. Everyone had just witnessed a battle that was less about power and more about pure, unadulterated strategy. All Might stood before the monitors, a hand on his chin, a deep, thoughtful expression on his face. That boy, he murmured, so quietly only he could hear. He didn't just try to overpower him. He used the power as a tool. A key to unlock a different solution entirely. He isn't just swinging, he's thinking with my power. Later, lying in Recovery Girl's infirmary, the familiar feeling of his stamina being drained to fuel his healing washing over him, Izuku looked at his system log. Team mission, complete. Results, victory by objective. All bonus objectives met. Rewards, 3,500 EXP distributed. LVL up. Izuku Midoriya is now LVL 28. LVL up. Izuku Midoriya is now LVL 29. 10 stat points available. 5 skill points available. 1 to Wisdom, WIS, and Charisma, CHR. Title acquired, Rookie Strategist. The rewards were immense. He had proven his concept. He had won his way. But as the mission summary faded, a new, far more significant notification took its place. The border was a deep, ethereal purple, and the text seemed to hum with ancient energy. Legacy Quest Update. The symbol of peace's legacy. Your unorthodox and intelligent use of One for All has created a resonance with the core of the quirk. A new connection has been established. The vestiges stir. He saw it in his mind's eye, a dark, empty space, where shadowy figures stood. For the first time, one of them seemed to turn its head, its featureless face looking directly at him. A new branch of the One for All skill tree is available for research. A new icon appeared in his skill menu, grayed out and locked, but tantalizingly present. Black Whip, 0% unlocked. Description: the quirk of a past user. A power born of emotion, it allows the user to generate tendrils of dark energy. Currently inaccessible. Unlock condition: connect with the past user to unlock this power. Izuku stared at the ceiling of the infirmary, the sweet smell of antiseptic filling his nostrils. He had won the battle. He had defeated his rival, but in doing so, he had knocked on a door to a past he never knew existed, and had awakened something deep within the heart of his borrowed power. The journey was becoming far more complex, and far more dangerous, than he could have ever imagined.